Hello, I'm Greg, and this is part 12 in my tutorial series, How to Recreate Defender in Unity. If you've ever wanted to know how to write a video game from scratch, then grab your favorite beverage and pull up a chair and follow along as I teach you how to write Defender in Unity. So it's time to give the player the ability to catch falling humans and then place them back down on the ground. So I noticed when I was testing the original Defender, when you catch a falling human, you get some bonus points, and it throws up a nice little visual and plays a sound effect when that happens. So I want to create a bonus visual object. I'm going to call this create empty, and I'm going to call this one 500 bonus visual. And we're going to add 3 child objects to it. We're going to have one for digit 1. And I'm going to add a sprite renderer to that. And if we go to our art folder and we take a look at the sprites that I pulled in, you can see we got this 500 and 250 image here. That's what they throw up in the Defender game when you catch a human and release a human. The only problem is when I pulled these into the game and used the sprite editor to slice them, it actually sliced the digits individually. So these are individual images. Instead of the 500 being one big image, you got an image for the 5, another one for the 0, and another one for the other 0. So I'm just going to roll with that. So I'm going to take the sprite render here and expand it, and then I'm going to drag the 5 for the 500 into that first digit right there. You see that? And let's just look at that in the scene view here. And I'm going to duplicate this twice, and I'm going to call this one digit 2, and I'm going to call this one digit 3, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to drag the 0 into digit 2 and this 0 into digit 3. And then I'm going to come into here and I'm going to drag that second digit over, maybe a little bit more. And I'm going to drag this third digit over. There. I think that looks pretty good. And we're going to want to add a script to this. So I'm going to go into my scripts folder. I'm going to create a new subfolder and call it Effects. Double click, go in there, right click, create C# script, and I'm going to call this Move and Fade Out. All right. So select that, let Unity recompile, and then we'll drag that script onto there and double click to open it up and zoom in. And we're going to add some serialized fields as per usual. I'm going to add a vector 2 for our movement speed. I'm doing a vector 2 because we don't care about the z-axis. And the fade out time, which I'll default to 8 seconds. The number of points we get for this bonus item. You know, really, it doesn't make sense that this should be move and fade out if I'm going to have points. So I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this bonus visualizer. Because single responsibility pattern, if this was just moving and fading out, I wouldn't want to have this. And let's see, I want an array of sprite renderers. Nice. Now in our awake method, as per usual, I'm going to cache my transform. And if you're using Visual Studio, you can hit Alt-Enter. I'm using Rider, so I'll hit Control period, create field, transform. And I'm just going to add a little extra line at the top there. Now for the update method, we're going to first of all do the move of our move and fade. So we're going to take our transforms position and add to it that move speed times time that delta time. But because we defined it as a vector 2, I need to cast it as a vector 3. And then we're going to iterate through all of our sprite renderers. Grab the color off of them. And we're going to take the alpha and we're going to smoothly decrement it down to 0 over our fade out time. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the mathf.clamp01. And I want to actually add another variable here called timer. And I want to say sprite color.alpha equals 1 minus mathf.clamp01 mathf.clamp01. We're going to take our timer and divide it by time.fade time. There we go. And we want to assign that back to our sprite renderer and increment our timer. There. That should handle moving and fading out that image. So let's go back into Unity. We've got this guy sitting here. So if I hit play, I'm going to turn our sound off. If I hit play, we should see this move up and fade out. Of course, we got to give it a movement speed. I'm going to use something really slight for the horizontal movement and then maybe twice as much for the vertical movement. And we need to give it our sprite renderer. So I'm going to right click and say properties to get a floating window here. So I've got this empty sprite renderers array. I'm going to grab all 3 of these game objects that each have a sprite renderer and drag them right into there. So there we got digit 1, 2, and 3. Rename that to be digit 1. And I'm going to create a prefab for that under effects. Just drag that right in there. All right, let's hit play and watch what happens. It did not fade out. It moved, but it did not fade out. There's something else I want to do in here too before I forget. I want to add an onEnable method. And I'm going to want to play a bonus sound. I want to assign our points. And I want this to destroy the game object after our fade out time is complete. But I'm going to add a little bit of a cushion. There we go. Now let's look at our update method. And what does it not like about this? Let me just delete this line here. Go back and hit play. There we go. Because I was setting it to 0 at the beginning of every frame, this was never fading it out. So probably I want to set it to 0 here. Even though the default is 0, I like to explicitly set things. Let's get our bonus sound working here. What we're going to do is say sound manager dot instance dot play audio clip sound manager dot instance dot bonus sound, which does not exist yet. So let's go into our audio manager here, and we're going to add the bonus sound serialized field, and we're going to add a public accessor, public audio clip bonus sound. All right, let's go back out into Unity. And we've got this prefab here. I'm going to unpack this prefab. We're going to rename it to 250 bonus visual. Go into our art folder, and we're going to drag in, got to select that, drag in the 2, the 5, and the 0, and then set this to be 250 points. And we'll add that as a prefab. And then delete this from the scene. Now let's go find our sound manager under Resources, Persistent Components, Sound Manager. You see we've got our bonus sound here. I am going to use Defender Free Man. I think that's what this is called. I'm just going to drag that right into there. And if I was to sample this, there we go. All right, so now we need to actually add the ability to catch the humans and put them down. So to do that, let's go to our scripts folder, and I think right in the root here, do I want it to be in the root or the mobs? I'll put it under mobs. I'm going to right click, create C# script, and call it catch human. And we'll let Unity recompile that while I go find our player prefab. And we're going to drag that script onto the player ship prefab and double click to open it up in the editor. Zoom in. And we're going to add a serialized field, a game object, that's going to be our bonus visualizer prefab. And we're going to add a public init method. I hit escape so it wouldn't try and autocomplete. Transform humans container. So what we want to do here is when the player ship puts a human back on the ground, we want to use this humans container to parent the human back to that. So we're going to add a parameter that's passed in from the game manager, and we're going to assign that to a member variable. And we will create that variable. And I'm just going to add a line there. I like to keep things a little bit separated. In our awake method, we will, as usual, cache our transform. Create that field. And in order to catch a human, we need to collide with them. And so our rigid body on the player ship, the collider is set to isTrigger. So we're going to handle the onTrigger enter 2D method. So onTrigger enter 2D. And I'm going to rename the collider to be other. And I'm just going to delegate this work to another function that I'm going to call try catch human. And I'm going to pass in that collider. Generate that function. So the first thing I want to do is I want to see if the thing that we hit is a human with a human state machine on it. So I'm going to say if not, other.tryGetComponent human state machine. And I'll just output that to a variable that I'll call human. I actually don't want a body because all I'm going to do here is return. So if we're not colliding with a human, we don't care about it. Let's just return. I also want to check to see if the human is falling. So we'll say if human.current state type, and that's why I grabbed the human state machine off of them, so I could check this. If it's not human falling, then return. So either it's not a human at all or it's not falling, we're going to return. Otherwise, if we're already carrying a human, we want to return. So I'm going to add a property to our own class called carrying human. And if that's not true, I'm going to return. So let's generate a property. And I'm going to move this up above our variables here. And I'm actually going to make this, I'm going to move it below our variable since it's not public. And it's going to be an expression body method. We don't need all this stuff here. Basically, all I'm going to say is, and I'm going to put this in parentheses because I'm going to do an assignment inside the parentheses and then compare the result to null. So I'm going to say human. So let's add another variable here. Human equals get component and children. Human. So we're going to see if we have a human in our children. So this is an assignment that's inside these parentheses. And if that evaluates to null, we're going to return true. No, return false. So we're going to turn true if it's not null. So if this is not null, then we're carrying a human. All right. Otherwise, let's actually catch this guy. First, I want to instantiate a little bonus prefab. So we'll say instantiate bonus prefab using the human's transform position and quaternion identity. That'll throw up that little 500 and play the sound. And it will give us 500 points. Then we want to parent the human's transform to us, to our transform. All right. That should allow us to catch a human. Now, in order for that to work, though, we need to go into our human state machine and add another transition. So we're going to go from falling to captured if is captured equals true. So it's the same as going from idle to captured. It's just that we're going from falling instead of from idle. But the condition is the same. Let's go out into Unity and give that a test. So before we can actually test, we need to go into our player ship and we need to assign that bonus prefab. And then I'm going to turn our sound on and give this a test. Okay, it worked. It worked, except I noticed that the 500 kind of moved across the screen as I flew. So that's because these guys both need to have the mob scroller script on them. So that'll take care of that. Okay, so we can catch humans. Now let's add the code so we can drop them back on the ground. So let's add the ability to catch the human. We're going to go up to our player ship, go into this catch human script, get rid of that that we're not using there. We're going to want to add an update method. And in this update method, we want to check to see if we're carrying a human. And if we are, we want to release them. So I'm going to say if carrying human, actually if not carrying human, I'm going to return here. So if we're not carrying a human, we're not doing anything. Otherwise, we're going to call try release human. I'm calling try release human because if we're not flying low enough, we're not going to release them. And one thing I want to change here, this carrying human is doing this get component and children, which is kind of expensive. So I don't want to do this every frame. So I'm going to use our little helpers class and say if helpers.evenFrame return. So we're only going to do this on odd frames. So not quite as big a performance hit. So the first thing I want to do is I want to check to see how low we're flying. So if we're not flying less than -3.5 F, we'll just return. The next thing we want to do is instantiate our little bonus prefab, the 250 bonus, and it just dawned on me that we need a second prefab. We've only got the one for the 500. We're going to need one for 250 as well. So we're going to call this 250 and 500. And then down here, we'll install the 500. I will say human dot, actually instantiate bonus prefab 250 using the humans transform and quaternion identity. Actually, I want transformed position and quaternion identity. All right, and then we want to set the parent of that human to be our transform. So we will say human transform set parent transform. Yes, that all looks pretty good, I think. Now, in order for this to work, we need to make sure that this init method is being called by our game manager. So right here where we spawn the player's ship, I'm going to say player ship dot get component catch human init mob manager humans container. So this way we're injecting that humans container into our catch human script on our player ship so that it can actually parent him back to the humans container. Let's jump back out into Unity and assign those prefabs. So we should see these change right here. And we do. So let's go into our effects. We want to put the 250 one there and the 500 one there. And we'll go ahead and give that a test. I'm going to expand this out a little bit. Okay, that's that's nuts. All right, we need to definitely fix whatever we're broken in there. That was getting called over and over and over again. The other thing, I didn't see the 250 bonus show up. I think we need to go into our sprite renderers here and set the order of the layer to something high. Just to make sure that they show up on top of the background. All right, let me look at our logic in that catch human thing and see what was going on here. So in update, if we're not carrying human return, otherwise we call try release human. And here we return if we're not below negative 3.5. Otherwise, so yeah, I think we need to set a flag or something in here so it doesn't try to do this more than once. So let me add a bool and just call it human dropped. And we can actually say if human dropped return. Otherwise, the very first thing we're going to do is say human dropped equals true. All right, let's see what that does. I shot too high. Okay, well, it displayed that bonus, so it thought I dropped it, but it didn't actually drop it. So we're doing something wrong where we're reparenting the human. So let's go down here, try release human. Yep, I was reparenting it back to ourself. And I want to do the same thing when I try and catch the human. I just want to prevent getting too many points, getting doubled up. All right. We can catch them, we can release them. One other thing I did off screen is when we play the sound for the bonus sound, I'm giving it a volume level of 0.25 because it was obnoxiously loud. Okay, I think I'm going to call that a wrap for this video and keep it kind of short this time. So we're able to now catch falling humans and place them back on the surface of the planet. Tune in for the next episode where we're going to handle the end of level logic so that we can throw up the scoring screen and load the next level. And we'll probably introduce a couple more enemies as well. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, do me a favor, click that like and subscribe button. It really does help me to grow my channel. And if you have any questions or suggestions, drop a comment down below. And be sure to check out my Discord channel. I'll put a link in the description below. I apologize if the Discord link I put in previous videos was not working. Hopefully I've got that straightened out now. And it's a great place if you want to post a more detailed question and put in some screenshots or code snippets or something like that to help me diagnose your problem. So, thanks so much for watching and good luck on your game development journey.